Labor Day. I have probably childhood memories of the significance of Labor Day. Probably on this day when I was 10 years old, we'd be going off on the last picnic of the summer, which was a tragedy. Or the next day, the Tuesday following, that we'd begin a new school year, another tragedy. But it certainly, for me at that point, was the significance of something finishing and something beginning. But only, of course, as I grew and understood the meaning of this holiday, out of respect for work, out of respecting, asking God's blessing upon human labor. That's the beauty of this day, to be thankful for what has been given to us, and knowing what's so important is our cooperation with God. God is our creator. And all three pontiffs have written significantly addressing the theology and the dignity of human labor. They address, in Genesis, God takes the initiative in creating the world and calling forth all human beings to be faithful stewards of creation. And so we're formed to share in God's continuing creative activity by partnering with God and in finishing the world and in helping bring it to completion and fulfillment. From this perspective, the work can be spiritually understood in terms of sharing in God's ongoing activity to build and to create and transform the world. Yes, human beings are co-creators with God. This vocation also demands self-discipline. Besides an exercise of self-discipline, work is also the means by which we develop and fulfill ourselves. In work, we shape the world and the environment around us. Through work, we also shape ourselves. St. John Paul II summarized that point in one of his encyclicals. The value of work is not primarily the kind of work being done, but the fact that the one who is doing it is a person. Labor Day offers an excellent opportunity to reflect on how we view the work in light of Catholic social teaching. So I hope that you have a good Labor Day, a Labor Day that also is observed in prayer, so that we will ask God's blessings upon all the work of our hands. And when we look at today's gospel, opposition to Jesus has become quite open in the gospel. The scribes and the Pharisees are looking for something to use against him. Jesus might just as well have cured the man with the withered hand the next day, but he broke the Sabbath law to teach us something very important, namely that it is always permitted to do good on the Sabbath. It is lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil. That question must have struck home to all his listeners. While Jesus was seeking to restore life, the scribes and the Pharisees were doing all they could to destroy Jesus. At La Salette, Mary wept because her children had gone astray and no longer sought to follow in the ways of her Son. Her very presence on that mountain in the French Alps makes us realize that she always sought to carry out her Son's wishes. Mary knew what Jesus was about, and she pleaded with all her children to return to him. Her tears conveyed to Melanie and Maximin how serious her message was. Her gentle voice told them of her deep love for them. Do we seek to do good in every aspect of our lives?